The crystal champagne flute trembled in my hand as I watched my mother-in-law, Jessica, saunter across the marble floor of her mansion, that familiar, predatory smile playing on her perfectly painted lips. I'd seen that look before. It usually preceded something awful. My name is Eleanor, and 6 months ago, I married into what I thought was the picture-perfect Montgomery family. Coming from a modest background, where I'd worked my way through college and built a career in financial forensics, I'd initially felt like I'd stepped into a fairy tale when Sterling proposed. "Eleanor, darling," Jessica's voice dripped with honey as she clinked her glass against mine. "You look absolutely stunning tonight. That dress must have cost a fortune." Her eyes flickered over my simple black cocktail dress, probably calculating its exact price. "Thank you, Jessica. It was actually a great find at—" "Speaking of money," she cut me off, gesturing to her husband Atticus to join us. "We need to discuss something important." Sterling appeared at my side, his hand finding the small of my back. The touch was reassuring, but I could feel the tension in his fingers. "Mother, can't this wait? We're celebrating Eleanor's promotion tonight." "Oh, but this is relevant to your financial future, darling." Jessica's smile widened as Atticus cleared his throat. "You see," he began, swirling his scotch, "raising Sterling was quite an investment. The best schools, the finest clothes, the right connections." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "We believe it's only fair that you contribute to repaying that investment." I nearly choked on my champagne. "I'm sorry, what?" "Ah, monthly maintenance fee," Jessica clarified, as if she were discussing the weather. "Say, $15,000? After all, we've given you our greatest asset, our son." The room seemed to spin. I looked at Sterling, whose face had turned an alarming shade of red. "You can't be serious," he sputtered. "I'm 34 years old, for God's sake." "And living quite comfortably on your combined income," Atticus noted, eyeing me specifically. "Your new position at the firm must pay well, Eleanor." My forensic accounting background screamed that something was off. The Montgomerys owned half of downtown. Why would they need our money? "We'll need to discuss this privately," I managed to say, my professional mask sliding into place. "Of course, darling." Jessica patted my cheek. "We'll have our lawyer draw up the paperwork. Just a formality." As she glided away to greet other guests, I caught sight of my best friend Evelyn across the room, her eyes wide with concern. She'd warned me about the Montgomerys' reputation, but I dismissed it as society gossip. Later that night, as Sterling and I drove home in tense silence, I remembered something my grandmother used to say. "The higher the pedestal, the harder the fall." "I'm so sorry," Sterling finally spoke, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "I never thought they'd— This is insane." "It's not your fault." I reached for his hand. "But something's not right. Your parents are worth millions. Why would they need our money?" "Control," he said bitterly. "It's always about control with them." I stared out the window at the passing city lights, my mind already spinning with possibilities. 7 years of investigating financial fraud had taught me to spot patterns, to follow paper trails, to uncover what people desperately wanted to hide. "Sterling," I said slowly, "do you trust me?" He glanced at me, confusion crossing his features. "Of course. Why?" "Because I think it's time someone looked closely at your parents' perfect facade." I pulled out my phone, opening my Notes app. "And I know exactly where to start." "Eleanor." His voice held a note of warning, but also curiosity. "They want to play games with money?" I felt a smile tugging at my lips. "Well, they picked the wrong daughter-in-law to mess with." As we pulled into our driveway, I was already composing an email to my old colleague, Michaela. If anyone could help me access the Montgomerys' corporate records, it would be her. Sterling killed the engine and turned to me, his face serious in the darkness. "Whatever you're planning, I'm with you. They've gone too far this time." I leaned over and kissed him, grateful for his support, but already feeling the weight of what lay ahead. The Montgomerys had built their empire on secrets and manipulation, but they'd never faced someone like me, someone who made a living uncovering exactly the kind of secrets they were trying to hide. Game on, Jessica, game on. Look at this, I whispered to Evelyn, sliding my laptop across the coffee shop table. 3 shell companies, all registered in the Cayman Islands, all linked to Jessica's charity foundation. Evelyn squinted at the screen, her coffee forgotten. And you found this how? Public records, mostly. Michaela helped me access some corporate databases. I took a sip of my Americano. The numbers don't add up, Ev. The foundation claims to raise millions for children's education, but I can only trace about 30% of those funds to actual charitable work. Holy shit! Evelyn breathed. Where's the rest going? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Sterling. Mother's planning a surprise visit to your office today. Heads up. Perfect timing, I muttered, quickly packing up my laptop. Jessica's about to make an appearance at my workplace. Be careful, Evelyn warned. She's not stupid. No, but she's arrogant, and that's exactly what I'm counting on. An hour later, I was at my desk when Jessica swept into my office, wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Eleanor, darling. She air-kissed both my cheeks. I was just meeting with some board members of my foundation nearby and thought I'd pop in. How thoughtful, I smiled, discreetly minimizing the spreadsheet on my screen. What perfect timing. I was just looking over your proposal. Oh? Her perfectly manicured fingers traced the edge of my desk. And? It's interesting. I pulled out a folder I'd prepared, but I have some questions about the numbers. Jessica's smile flickered for just a moment. Numbers are so tedious, dear. Why don't we discuss this over lunch? Actually, I'm fascinated by numbers. For instance, I opened the folder. How does your household justify requiring $15,000 monthly from us when your foundation alone reported $20 million in donations last year? Her eyes narrowed slightly. You've been researching our finances? It's what I do for a living, Jessica. Understanding money is my passion. Some might call that prying, she said softly, threat underlying her tone. Others might call it due diligence. I met her gaze steadily. Especially when family's involved. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Jessica straightened, all pretense of warmth vanishing. You're playing a dangerous game, Eleanor. No game, I replied. Just facts and figures. Speaking of which, I found something interesting about Atticus's company restructuring in 2019. Enough! She slammed her hand on my desk, mask finally cracking. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Actually, I think I do. I stood slowly. And I think you're worried about exactly how much I know. Jessica's face went through a remarkable transformation, fury melting into that practiced society smile. Oh, darling, she laughed lightly. You really are adorable. Sterling always did have a weakness for ambitious women. But remember, you married into our family. We can just as easily cast you out. Is that a threat? Consider it friendly advice. Now, about that monthly contribution. The answer is no. I gathered my things. And Jessica, you might want to review your foundation's tax returns. There are some discrepancies that could raise eyebrows at the IRS. Her face paled slightly, but she recovered quickly. You're making a mistake. No, I said, heading for the door. I'm finally seeing things clearly. That evening, I was reviewing more documents when Sterling came home, looking worried. Mother called, he said, loosening his tie. She was upset. I bet she was. I showed him what I'd found. Sterling, your parents' wealth, a lot of it isn't real. They're running a sophisticated pyramid scheme through that charity foundation. He sank into the chair beside me, running a hand through his hair. Christ, are you sure? Getting there, but I found something else. I pulled up another document. Look at this. A private school receipt from when you were 10. It's half what your parents claimed they spent on your education. They've been lying about everything? His voice cracked slightly. I think they're in serious financial trouble, I said gently. The maintenance fee they're demanding? They actually need it. Sterling was quiet for a long moment. What do we do? I have a friend, I said carefully. A lawyer named Miles. He specializes in financial fraud cases. Just then, my email pinged. It was from Michaela. Found something big. Need to meet ASAP. It's about Atticus's private accounts. I showed Sterling the email. He nodded slowly, determination replacing the shock in his eyes. Make the call to Miles, he said. It's time to end this. I reached for my phone, heart pounding. The pieces were falling into place faster than I'd expected, but something told me this was just the beginning of what we'd uncover. This is bigger than fraud, Miles said, spreading documents across his office desk. We're looking at potential money laundering, tax evasion, and misappropriation of charitable funds. I sat forward, Sterling tense beside me. How bad are we talking? Federal prison bad. Miles adjusted his glasses. These shell companies aren't just hiding money. They're moving it through a complex network of fake charitable projects. A knock at the door made us all jump. Michaela slipped in, clutching her laptop. Sorry I'm late, she said, setting up her computer. But you need to see this. I found something in Atticus's private email server. How did you? Sterling began. Don't ask, she cut him off. Plausible deniability. But look at these exchanges between your father and someone named Ghost Donor. We huddled around her screen. My stomach dropped as I read the emails. They're selling fake tax receipts, I breathed. Rich donors pay half the stated donation amount, get full tax write-offs, and Jessica's foundation keeps the difference. Brilliant and horrible, Miles muttered, taking notes. How long has this been going on? At least 5 years, Michaela said. But here's the kicker. They're getting sloppy. Last month, they accidentally used the same receipt number twice for different donors. Sterling stood abruptly, pacing the room. I can't. I grew up believing they were pillars of the community. All those charity galas, those scholarship announcements. All fake, I said softly. The scholarship kids never existed. My phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. Jessica just announced a new $5 donation to Children's Hospital. Press conference happening now. Turn on the news, I said quickly. Miles flicked on his office TV. There was Jessica, resplendent in pearl gray, dabbing tears as she spoke about helping sick children. This is live? Michaela asked, typing furiously. Yes, and it's no coincidence, I said. She's trying to generate positive press. She knows we're onto them. We need to move faster, Miles decided. I'm filing for a preliminary injunction today. We need to freeze those foundation assets before they can move them. Wait, Sterling said, his voice strained. If we do this, my parents could go to prison. The room fell silent. I crossed to him, taking his hands in mine. Sterling, look at me. They're stealing from sick children, real ones, to fund their lifestyle. His jaw clenched, then he nodded. Do it. Miles picked up his phone, but before he could dial, my laptop pinged with an email alert. It's from Jessica, I said, opening it. My blood ran cold as I read aloud. Dear Eleanor, since you enjoy investigating so much, perhaps you'd be interested in these photos of Sterling from last weekend. Attached were several photos of Sterling leaving a hotel with an attractive woman. Sterling laughed, surprising us all. That's my sister Rachel. She was in town secretly because she's leaving her abusive husband. I was helping her hide from him. Jessica's getting desperate, Miles observed. She's trying to drive a wedge between you two. Forward me that email, Michaela said. It's evidence of attempted blackmail. Another ping, this time from an anonymous email. Back off or Sterling's sister won't be the only one needing protection. That's it. Miles grabbed his phone. We're getting a restraining order, too. These threats are crossing a line. As he made the call, I pulled up the Foundation's latest tax returns. Something about the timing of Jessica's press conference was bothering me. Michaela, I called. Can you check something? Look at the Foundation's quarterly filing dates against major donations. She typed rapidly, then gasped, "Oh my God!" Every major donation announcement comes exactly 3 days before they move large sums offshore. The press conference today means they're planning to move money soon, I finished. Miles, how quickly can you file that injunction? Give me an hour, he said, already drafting documents. Sterling's phone rang. It was Atticus. He put it on speaker. Son, Atticus's voice was unusually gentle. Let's talk about this. Your mother and I only want what's best for the family. Like stealing from charity? Sterling's voice shook. Using my sister's situation for blackmail? You don't understand the pressures we're under, Atticus said. The lifestyle we've given you was built on lies. Sterling cut him off. We're done talking, Father. As he hung up, another email arrived from the hospital's finance department, where Jessica had just announced the donation. The check bounced, I said, reading quickly. They tried to process it immediately, and it bounced. She's announcing donations with money she doesn't have. Perfect, Miles said grimly. That's the last piece we needed. By this time tomorrow, their entire operation is going to crash down around them. Looking at Sterling's determined face, I realized there was no turning back now. The next 24 hours would change everything, for better or worse. The storage unit smelled of dust and old paper. Sterling and I stood among towers of boxes, each labeled with years spanning his childhood. Mother always said these were destroyed in the basement flood, he muttered, opening the nearest box. I pulled out a stack of documents, my forensic instincts tingling. These are medical bills. From a Dr. Patterson? Sterling's face went white. I've never heard of him. Look at the dates, I said softly. Ages 8 through 16. Weekly sessions. Psychiatric sessions, he read, hands trembling. But I don't remember. A familiar voice came from behind us. You wouldn't. They had you medicated. We spun around. Rachel stood in the storage unit doorway, her face grim. Sis? Sterling stepped forward. What are you talking about? I found out last year, she said, joining us. That's partly why I left Thomas. The guilt of keeping this from you. I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled out more papers. Insurance claims, prescription records, payment receipts. They diagnosed you with depression after grandfather died, Rachel continued. But instead of helping you process it naturally, they wanted you more manageable. The perfect, compliant son. Sterling sank onto a box. The pills they gave me every morning. They said they were vitamins. Antipsychotics, I read from a prescription label. Heavy doses for a child. That's why I can't remember whole chunks of my childhood, he whispered. They kept me drugged. My phone buzzed. Michaela calling. Eleanor, we found the offshore account. It's not in Jessica's name. It's in Sterling's. What? I put her on speaker. They set it up when he was 10, she explained. They've been filtering money through accounts in his name for decades. If this gets traced, I'd be liable, Sterling finished, face hardening. They've been setting me up as their fall guy. Rachel pulled out more documents. There's worse. Look at these adoption papers. Adoption? I grabbed the yellowed forms. Sterling, these have your name on them. That's impossible, he started, but Rachel shook her head. You're not their biological son, she said quietly. They adopted you through a private arrangement, paid your birth mother to disappear. Sterling's legs gave out. He sat heavily on the concrete floor, staring at nothing. The perfect heir, he said bitterly. Bought and manufactured. My phone buzzed again. Evelyn this time. Eleanor, Jessica's at your office. She's demanding to see you. Good, I said. Tell her I'll be right there. I have some questions about Sterling's medical history. Be careful, Rachel warned. When Mother feels cornered. I know. I squeezed Sterling's shoulder. But it's time she answered for what she's done. 20 minutes later, I walked into my office. Jessica sat at my desk, examining her manicure. Interesting storage unit you visited today, she said without looking up. Interesting medical records you kept, I countered. Her eyes snapped to mine. We did what was necessary. Necessary? I slammed the prescription bottles on the desk. You drugged a child into compliance. We gave him a better life, she hissed. You have no idea what he was like before. Wild, emotional, uncontrollable. We made him into someone worthy of our name. By erasing who he really was? By setting him up to take the fall for your crimes? She smiled coldly. Prove it. Oh, I will. I pulled out my phone, playing a recording. Her own voice filled the room. We made him into someone worthy of our name. The color drained from her face. That's illegal, she whispered. So is drugging children and committing fraud, I replied. Want to add witness intimidation and blackmail to the list? You stupid girl, she stood slowly. Do you really think you can win against us? We made Sterling. We own him. No! Sterling's voice came from the doorway. You destroyed me, but not anymore. Jessica spun around. Darling, I can explain. Save it for court. He cut her off. The FBI is executing a search warrant at the mansion right now. They're talking to Father as we speak. She staggered, gripping the desk. You wouldn't. Watch me, he said quietly. You wanted monthly payments? Fine. You can earn them in the prison laundry. As security arrived to escort Jessica out, she turned to me one last time. This isn't over. Actually, I held up a USB drive. It is. Everything's here. The fraud, the drugs, the offshore accounts, even the real adoption papers. After she was gone, Sterling pulled me into his arms. You okay? I asked against his chest. No, he said honestly, but I will be. For the first time in my life, I feel awake. My phone lit up with a text from Miles. Atticus is singing like a bird. Get ready for tomorrow's deposition. This is going to be big. They've hired Marcus Webb, Miles announced, pacing his office. Top defense attorney in the state, known for making evidence disappear. Let them waste their money, I said, sorting through our files. We have copies of everything. Sterling entered, looking exhausted. The FBI just finished at the mansion. You won't believe what they found in Father's study. Before he could elaborate, Michaela burst in. We have a problem. Someone's trying to hack into our secure server. Can you stop them? I asked. Already did, but... She hesitated. They were good, really good, and they were targeting files about Sterling's adoption specifically. A sharp knock made us all jump. A courier handed Miles an envelope. Court order, he read, face darkening. They're challenging the legitimacy of our evidence based on how it was obtained. That was fast, I muttered. Webb's efficiency is impressive. There's more, Sterling said quietly. Rachel's missing. The room went silent. What do you mean missing? I demanded. She's not answering her phone. Her hotel room is empty, and... He swallowed hard. There was a note, from Mother. He handed me a cream-colored card. Jessica's elegant handwriting flowed across it. Family matters should stay in the family. Back off, or Rachel won't be the only one to disappear. That's it. Miles grabbed his phone. I'm calling in a favor with Judge Martinez. We need protective orders now. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. Hello? Eleanor. A familiar voice distorted. Back parking garage. 10 minutes. Come alone. Rachel? But the line was dead. It's a trap, Sterling said immediately. Obviously, I agreed. So let's set one of our own. 9 minutes later, I walked into the dim parking garage. Security cameras were already looping old footage, courtesy of Michaela. Sterling and Miles were positioned behind concrete pillars, and 2 FBI agents waited in a van nearby. Hello? I called out. Over here! Rachel stepped out from behind a car, looking terrified. Jessica gripped her arm, and behind them stood Atticus, his usual polished appearance notably disheveled. Let her go, I said calmly. Delete the evidence first, Jessica demanded. Mother, this is insane, Rachel pleaded. Quiet, Atticus snapped. This little gold digger has destroyed everything we built. You destroyed it yourselves, I replied. Decades of fraud, manipulation, and abuse. It ends now. Nothing ends, Jessica laughed sharply. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Our connections are abandoning you as we speak, I cut in. The FBI has your files. The IRS has frozen your accounts. It's over. Nothing's over until I say it is. Atticus suddenly pulled out a gun. Several things happened at once. Rachel broke free, running toward me. Sterling emerged from his hiding spot. The FBI agents burst from their van. Drop the weapon, they shouted. You ungrateful brats, Atticus snarled, his hand shaking. After everything we did for you. Federal agents, on the ground. But Jessica was laughing, a high, unhinged sound. You think this is the end? We still have the offshore accounts. We still have… Nothing, I interrupted. Check your phone. She pulled it out, face falling as she read the breaking news alert. Prominent charity foundation exposed in massive fraud scheme. FBI seizes assets. That's impossible, she whispered. The evidence isn't just on our server, I explained as agents handcuffed Atticus. It's been sent to every major news outlet, the FBI, and the IRS. There's no making this disappear. You've ruined us, she breathed. No, Mother, Sterling stepped forward. You ruined yourself, and you nearly ruined me, too. As agents led them away, Rachel collapsed into Sterling's arms, sobbing. I'm so sorry, she gasped. They found me at the hotel, said they'd hurt Thomas's kids if I didn't help them. It's okay, he soothed. It's over now. Miles approached, looking grim. We need to move fast. Webb will try to get them released on bail. Let him try, I said, watching Jessica and Atticus being placed in separate police cars. We have enough evidence to keep them locked up for years. My phone buzzed. Evelyn, just saw the news. You okay? Before I could reply, another message came through. This one was from an anonymous email address. You think you've won? This is just the beginning. Some secrets stay buried. I showed it to Sterling. He wrapped an arm around me, pulling me close. Let them try, he said firmly. We're done being afraid. But as we watched the police cars drive away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Jessica's final smile had held too much confidence for someone whose world was crumbling. What else were they hiding? Look at this, Michaela said, pointing to her laptop screen. Every time we trace an offshore account, 2 more pop up. It's like a financial hydra. We were camped out in Miles's office, surrounded by empty coffee cups and takeout containers. 3 days had passed since Jessica and Atticus's arrest. They're burning through shell companies, I observed, moving money faster than we can track it. That's not the worst part, Rachel said, entering with a stack of papers. I found Mother's private diary in the mansion. You need to see this. She handed me a leather-bound book. My eyes widened as I read. Sterling, I called out. There were others. He looked up from his own stack of documents. Others? Other children, I read aloud. Before you, 3 failed adoptions. All returned because they weren't suitable. Jesus Christ, Miles muttered. She wrote about them like they were defective products, Rachel said, disgusted. But there's more. The last entry mentions something called Project Legacy. My phone rang. Evelyn. Eleanor, turn on the news. Now. Miles grabbed the remote. Jessica's face filled the screen, standing outside the courthouse after making bail. These allegations are ridiculous, she was saying, perfectly composed. Our foundation has helped countless children. Ask Timothy Roberts, one of our first scholarship recipients. He's now a successful surgeon. She's trying to get ahead of the story, Miles said. No, I stood up, staring at the screen. She's sending us a message. Michaela, search for Timothy Roberts. Fingers flying over keys, Michaela pulled up records. Timothy Roberts, age 32, pediatric surgeon at… Wait. This is weird. His records only go back 15 years. Because he doesn't exist, Sterling said suddenly. He's one of their fake success stories. But why mention him specifically? Rachel wondered. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Ask about the Roberts procedure. Midnight, St. Mark's Hospital parking lot. It's a trap, Sterling said immediately. Maybe not, I replied. Michaela, what's the Roberts procedure? More typing. An experimental treatment protocol developed 15 years ago. Highly controversial, never approved by medical boards. Cross-reference it with your parents' foundation, I suggested. Her face went pale. Oh, God! They funded it. Through a series of dummy corporations. The trials. They used kids from their fake scholarship program as test subjects. That's what Project Legacy was, Rachel whispered. They weren't just stealing money. They were trafficking children for medical experiments, I finished. The foundation was a front for something much darker. Sterling's phone rang. Atticus. We all fell silent as he put it on speaker. Son! Atticus's voice was eerily calm. Call off your wife. Some doors should stay closed. Why, father? Afraid of what's behind them? You have no idea what's at stake. The work we did, it was necessary, revolutionary. It was evil, Sterling snapped, and illegal. Everything's illegal until it changes the world, Atticus replied. Ask yourself why we never got caught. Who was protecting us? What kind of power they have? The line went dead. He's trying to scare us off, Miles said, but his voice was uncertain. Because we're close to something big, I insisted. Michaela, can you get into St. Mark's Hospital records? Already on it. Wait, a whole wing was privately funded by the foundation, but it's not on any official hospital maps. Rachel grabbed her coat. I'm going to that midnight meeting. Not alone, Sterling said. None of us is going alone, I decided. But first, we need to make some calls. Miles, how quickly can you get a warrant? For a hospital? With these allegations? Give me an hour. My phone buzzed again. Another anonymous text. Tick-tock. Some secrets kill. They're getting desperate, Sterling observed. Good, I said, gathering my things. Desperate people make mistakes. And I bet whatever's in that hospital wing is what Jessica's been so confident about. Be careful, Michaela warned. These people, they're not just rich fraudsters anymore. This is something else. I know, I replied, thinking of all those missing children. That's exactly why we have to finish this. As we prepared for the midnight meeting, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were about to uncover something that would change everything. Jessica's smug smile, Atticus's warnings, the mysterious hospital wing. It all pointed to something bigger than fraud, bigger than revenge. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice for all those children who disappeared into the Foundation's perfect lies. And I was going to expose every last one of them, no matter the cost. The courtroom fell silent as I took the stand. Jessica and Atticus sat at the defense table, both wearing expensive suits and practiced expressions of injured innocence. Please state your name for the record, the prosecutor began. Eleanor Montgomery. And how did you first discover the irregularities in the Foundation's finances? When my in-laws demanded a monthly payment of $15,000, I replied. It didn't make sense for people of their wealth to need that money. So I started looking deeper. Objection! Marcus Webb stood. Speculation. Overruled, Judge Martinez said. Continue. I pulled out the documents we'd gathered. The Foundation claimed to support hundreds of scholarship students, but we could only verify 3 actual recipients in 15 years. The rest were ghost identities used to funnel money into unauthorized medical trials. Jessica's perfectly maintained smile cracked slightly. Tell us about the hospital wing, the prosecutor prompted. St. Mark's Hospital, West Wing B. Officially, it doesn't exist, but the Foundation poured millions into it through shell companies. We found evidence of at least 27 children who went through their scholarship program and disappeared into that facility. Lies! Atticus suddenly shouted. You have no proof! Order! The judge banged her gavel. Actually, I continued, we do. Dr. Sarah Williams? A woman stood up in the gallery. Jessica's face went white. Dr. Williams worked in that wing, I explained. She kept records of everything. Every unauthorized trial, every child, every failure. Your Honor, Webb interrupted, this witness wasn't on the list. Because she only came forward last night, the prosecutor countered. After the defendants tried to have her killed. Gasps filled the courtroom. Dr. Williams walked to the stand as I stepped down. I was the lead researcher, she began, voice shaking. They promised us we were helping sick children, but the trials, they weren't about helping anyone. They were using these kids to test experimental drugs that would be worth billions if they worked. And did they work? The prosecutor asked. No, she whispered. 23 children died. The other 4, they'll never be the same. Jessica stood up suddenly. You signed NDAs. You can't. Sit down, the judge ordered. The money laundering, the fraud. It was all to cover up the medical trials, I added. Every fake scholarship kid was really a test subject. They preyed on desperate families, promising education, but delivering their children to that hospital wing instead. Atticus leaned over to whisper something to Webb, but the lawyer shook his head sharply. And Sterling? The prosecutor asked. How does he fit into this? He was their first experiment, I said, watching Jessica's face contort. The perfect adoption. They used him to test the initial drugs. When that seemed successful, they expanded the program. But they needed more children, more test subjects. That's what the foundation was really for. These accusations are outrageous. Jessica stood again. We helped those children. Mrs. Montgomery, Judge Martinez warned, one more outburst, and you'll be held in contempt. The prosecutor held up a file. We have here the complete records from Dr. Williams, corroborated by hospital staff and surviving victims. The FBI has confirmed the authenticity of all documents. Webb slumped in his chair, defeated. Furthermore, the prosecutor continued, we have evidence that certain government officials were bribed to overlook these activities. Those officials are being arrested as we speak. Atticus finally cracked. You don't understand. The research was vital. Those children were serving a greater purpose. Remove the defendant, the judge ordered as bailiffs approached. Sterling! Jessica called out desperately. Tell them how we made you better. Tell them. Better? Sterling stood in the gallery. You drugged me, experimented on me, used me as your prototype for torturing other children. You're monsters. As they were led away, Jessica turned to me one last time. You'll regret this. There are people, powerful people, who are all being arrested right now. I finished for her. Game over, Jessica. The judge called for order as the courtroom erupted. Outside, reporters were already gathering, cameras flashing. But I could only watch Sterling, who sat with Rachel, both of them finally free from their parents' shadow. Dr. Williams touched my arm as she passed. Thank you, she whispered. I've been trying to expose this for years, but I was too afraid. The evidence? I asked. Safe, she assured me. Multiple copies, multiple locations. They can't bury this anymore. My phone buzzed. Michaela. FBI just raided 3 more clinics connected to the foundation. This is going global. Miles appeared at my side. The jury won't be out long, not with this evidence. We're looking at multiple life sentences. I watched as Jessica and Atticus were led away in handcuffs, their empire of lies finally crumbling. But it wasn't triumph I felt. It was a deep, aching sadness for all the lives they destroyed in their pursuit of power and profit. Sterling took my hand, squeezing it gently. It's really over? Almost, I said, thinking of all the families who still needed answers. But at least now there'll be justice. They found another one, Sterling said, handing me his phone as we sat in our living room. A survivor from the trials. She's willing to testify. I scrolled through the email, hope and sadness mingling as I read. That makes 6 now. Each story helps build a stronger case against the other conspirators. The TV murmured in the background, showing footage of Jessica and Atticus being led into prison. Their sentences had been handed down that morning. Multiple life terms, no possibility of parole. Rachel entered, carrying a stack of letters. More families reaching out. They want to know what happened to their children. We'll find answers for all of them, I promised, making space for her on the couch. My phone rang. Michaela. Eleanor, you need to see this. Jessica left a video message. It just went viral. I pulled up the link. Jessica's face filled my screen, her prison jumpsuit a stark contrast to her usual designer wear. You think you've won, she sneered. But our work was essential. Those children were sacrifices for the greater good. And there are others who will continue our research. You can't stop progress. I shut it off. She still doesn't get it. No, Sterling said quietly. She never will. The doorbell rang. Dr. Williams stood outside with a young woman I didn't recognize. This is Amy, Sarah introduced us. She was in the trials. She wanted to meet you both. Amy stepped forward, her hands trembling slightly. I was there with your brother, Sterling. Tommy. He protected me, made sure I got my real medicine, not just their experimental drugs. Sterling's face went pale. Tommy? I had a brother? They brought him in when you were away at college, Amy explained. He looked so much like you, but he didn't survive the trials. Rachel grabbed Sterling's hand as he processed this new revelation. That's why we're here, Sarah said. We're starting a foundation, a real one this time. For the survivors, for the families still searching for answers. We want you both involved. Not just involved, Amy added. We want you to run it. I looked at Sterling, seeing the mix of pain and purpose in his eyes. Yes, he said firmly. It's time to heal what they broke. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Evelyn, clutching newspapers. They're publishing everything, every detail, every victim, every corrupt official. No more secrets. Good, I said. The truth is the only way forward. Miles called next, his voice excited. The pharmaceutical companies involved are facing criminal charges. Their stocks are crashing. The whole network is falling apart. As I hung up, Sterling pulled out an old photo. Him as a child, blank-eyed and drugged, standing between Jessica and Atticus. I used to think I was broken, he said softly. That something was wrong with me, but it was them. It was always them. And now they can't hurt anyone else. Rachel reminded him. My phone lit up with a text from Michaela. Hospital records recovered from all sites. Starting to match names with missing persons reports. Families will finally know. We should hold a memorial, Amy suggested. For Tommy, for all of them. Not just a memorial, I said, an idea forming. A gathering. For everyone. Survivors, families, whistleblowers. Let them all know they're not alone anymore. Sterling nodded slowly. And we'll announce the new foundation there. Show them that something good can come from all this pain. The truth really does set you free, Rachel mused, looking at her brother. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts, Sterling corrected, pulling her into a hug. I watched them, thinking about how far we'd come from that first confrontation over a monthly allowance. What had started as simple revenge had uncovered something far darker, but also the chance for real healing. My phone buzzed one last time. An email from the prison warden. Jessica Montgomery requests a meeting. Delete it, Sterling said, reading over my shoulder. We're done with their manipulation. As I hit delete, I felt the last weight lift from my shoulders. Jessica and Atticus had tried to build an empire on stolen lives and broken trust. Instead, they'd created the tools of their own destruction and our redemption. Ready to start the real work? I asked Sterling. He looked around at our gathered allies, Sarah with her evidence, Amy with her testimony, Rachel with her strength, Evelyn with her loyalty, and smiled. Ready, he said. It's time to build something true. Outside, reporters were still camped on our lawn, waiting for statements about the case. But in here, surrounded by people committed to healing and truth, we'd found something better than revenge. We'd found purpose, and that was worth more than all the justice in the world.